And this is the final output of this tutorial. So you're going to learn how to model, animate, create visual effects, composite, and edit, all within Blender. So it's a full step process. This is done all within Blender using no other programs except for Photoshop if you want to texture something. But beyond that, the editing, the visual effects, the fire, the particle systems, all built in within the free program of Blender. Let's begin by setting up Blender's user interface and startup file. So let's go over to File, User Preferences. Let's get Blender all ready to go. All right, so in the User Interface tab, I'm going to check Rotate Around Selection. That keeps whatever I have selected in the viewport centered as I rotate around the viewport. Let's go to the Editing tab. Release confirms. In Blender, when you select and move an object around, it gets stuck to the mouse until you hit Enter or Escape on the keyboard. Release confirms gives me the ability to just let go of the mouse and it lets go of the object. Input tab. I like to select with left click, not right click. If you have a 1-button mouse, you might have to check Emulate 3-button mouse here. And if you do not have a numeric pad on your keyboard, you might want to check Emulate Numeric Pad. Orbital Style, how I rotate around the viewport. I like to have it a trackball most of the time, but sometimes I'll switch it to turntable depending on what I'm doing. And there's quite a few other options in here you can take a look at. Now before I go through and change my shortcut keys in here, I'm going to go ahead and add a new profile by clicking this plus sign here. You can see here there's a couple profiles for shortcut keys, 3ds Max, Blender, and Maya. I'm going to hit the plus sign and say Nate. It's creative. All right, so I've set it to Nate. Now I'm going to go into 3D View, 3D View Global. And let's change the way I navigate the 3D viewport by going into Rotate, Move, and Zoom. Okay. Now when I want to rotate the viewport, I want to hold down Alt and middle mouse button. This is like 3ds Max. If you're more used to Cinema or Maya, you might want to set it to whatever Cinema Maya is. I don't remember Cinemas, even though I work on it on a daily basis. Move is going to be just the middle mouse button. So right now, if I click and hold the middle mouse button, I move. Alt, middle mouse button is rotate. Okay. And last but not least is zoom, which is either scrolling the middle mouse button or control the middle mouse button. So control middle mouse button zooms, or I can scroll the wheel. Okay. So very useful. Good with those. Minimize all this. All right, so that's now saved into the Nate parameter. Let's go into add-ons. Now, add-ons are already installed into Blender. They're just not activated when you load it up. And that's because some of it you'll be using once in a great while. Some of it you'll probably use over and over again. Depends on the type of user you are in Blender. So there's a few things I like to have activated right off the bat. First one is import images as planes right here. Basically, there's a lot of documentation you can go online to look at this about, but really what it does is if you activate this, you can import an image directly to a plane and it sets up the material structure for you. So it's very useful. Next I'm going to do is auto space, which should show me the render auto tile size. This looks at your computer and says, okay, what is the best setting for the tile sizes to work with this particular computer? So that's for rendering. I'm going to do extra. Okay, now extra, there's a couple options, extra curve objects or extra mesh objects. Let me show you what it is. If I hit Shift+A, mesh objects right now, these are the standard ones. This is the import image or image as planes option I just added. If I check this and hit Shift+A, you'll notice that I have quite a few other options now, and we definitely need this because we will be working with gears within Blender. So definitely activate that. Extra objects, and next is going to be loop tools. This is just for editing the meshes. We'll talk about it later. And fracture. So there's two options for fracture, and I'm going to activate both of them. That's for breaking objects up. Definitely want to have that for this tutorial. And I think that's it for the add-ons for right now. And of course, I'll come in here and add more depending on what file and what I'm doing. I'm going to go into theme. This is where you can change the entire color palette to your Blender file. So you can really customize it. Just an example, here's my selection. Right now it's blue. I can change it to, let's say, red, orange, any color I want. I'm going to stick with the blue. File tab. Auto run Python scripts. Let's check that for this tutorial. The reason why we need this for this tutorial, because we do a little bit of code, and you might get an error message up here at the top that says auto run is not activated, won't work. So you definitely will need this for this particular tutorial. Some people say if you keep this on all files, it might cause some issues. I've never really run into issues with it, but we definitely need it for this tutorial, so check it. System. This deals with your system interface. Really what we need in here is the compute device. If you have an NVIDIA graphics card, you can activate CUDA and use your graphics card to render if you're running cycles. That's the kind of the real world cycles engine or render engine in Blender. You can increase render times by like 50%, or sometimes even like 200-300%, depending on the type of graphics card you have, over the CPU rendering. So this is very nice. I do believe this version of Blender will have an option when it fully releases, because it's just the release candidate, where you can use an ATI card. I do not know how well it's going to work because it's brand new, but NVIDIA is the way to go if you're running 3D CG work. So just keep that in mind. NVIDIA, CUDA, it works. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. So I'm going to hit Save User Settings. So that saves everything in here, so I don't have to keep doing that every time I load up Blender. Let's go ahead and close this out. Open this back up. All right, there's a few things in my startup file I like to have activated. Number one is I don't like to have anything in my scene. So I'm going to go ahead and hit X on the keyboard to delete this box. Select the light, X, select the camera, X. Okay, so that cleans that mess out. Now, if you're coming from other 3D packages, you'll notice that the command user menu down here for the 3D viewport is at the base. You might like to have it at the top. To change it, all you need to do is right click, say flip to top. Any window in Blender can do this. Okay, so if you want to reorganize how your menus are set in Blender, you can close these out. Each one is its own type of window base. I can actually create my own type of quad menu in here by clicking and dragging this open, and there's a new window, and I can change if it's a view right. Now that's my right, and right now it's an orthographic, so I can change it, or sorry, it was in perspective. I can change it to an orthographic view. So you can rebuild, relay out anything you want in Blender. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that extra window. If you do like to have a common quad menu directly in here, if you hit in on the keyboard, it opens up this side menu or this plus sign, and you come down to display, toggle quad. So some people like to have this activated right off the bat. I however do not. So let me turn off quad view. Okay, so I'm going to hit in on the keyboard. T on the keyboard is the shortcut key for this menu over here. I like to have that loaded right when I jump into Blender. Is there anything else? Nope, that's pretty much it. So here's going to be our startup file. So let's go File and Save Startup File and click again. So now every time I open up Blender, no matter what project I work in, this is the type of file that'll be my base point when I'm not loading up an actual file that I started with. But every time I just open up Blender, here's my base point. Nothing in the scene, all my shortcuts and everything else is set properly. Let's go over file management. Rule number one, do not save to your primary drive, which on a Windows is the C drive. The more you fill this up, the slower your computer will run. This runs on Macs and PCs, so ideally you want to save to secondary drives. I know some of you run it on Macs, you don't have a choice, and I'm sorry, but try to run on a secondary drive for your work. That means do not be saving to your desktop. In the industry, you tend to actually save to a server, not even the computer you're working on. They have file management software that actually runs you to particular folders and saves in and out of those. I'm going to go ahead and go into TrapCG. So I've created a folder for this project called Time. And I've already got a reference folder in here, and that's where I've stored all my reference images. This is the actual image I had in mind for referencing this project. There was a larger one on the internet, but unfortunately I didn't get to it in time. And it disappeared, so I was stuck to the thumbnail. But this is the overall idea I was thinking for the clock. Let's see here. I want to create a new folder called 3D. I like to be very organized. It's going to be for all my 3D work. And in here, I'm going to create another folder called Text. And that's short for texture. I got used to this acronym because of cinema. And so that's pretty much it. Let's import our reference image. So I'm going to hit in on the keyboard, and I'm going to minimize all these views just to show the background image. I'm going to click Add, Open. I'm going to go to my drive where I have my reference image, time, reference, and to see thumbnails, I click this icon here. I'm going to click this one, click Open. All right, so background images can only be viewed in orthographic views. You can see here we're in a user perspective view. So let's switch to the top orthographic. To do so, you can come down to View, Top, which is also number 7 on the numeric keypad. And then we also need to go View Perspective Ortho to switch into orthographic. Now you can see here, top ortho. All right, so now our reference image is visible. You can limit the reference image just to the top view, which I'm not going to worry about right now. We have the move, size, and rotation for the reference image, but we'll adjust that here in a sec. Let's start by creating the body of this pocket watch. To do so, you can go to the Create panel, and I think a cylinder would be a good start point, or you can hit Shift-A on the keyboard, Mesh, Cylinder. Properties are in the lower left-hand corner here. Do not deselect your object or you will lose your property settings. All right, it's not like other 3D programs that actually store this data. In fact, if you move your object, you will lose these properties. So set these properties first before you do anything to your object. Now, when you create an object, it creates it to the 3D cursor, which is this little icon in here. Now, remember that the 3D cursor right here tells me that I'm at 0, 0, 0. And to move your 3D cursor, you right-click. Definitely don't want to do this. I always want it at 0, 0, 0. So just keep that in mind. Don't move your cursor around, your 3D cursor. Keep it at 0, 0, 0. And the fact that you can't right-click in your viewport here. Okay, it's not like other 3D programs that have a right-click menu. So moving on to the radius of this object, I'm going to set it to, let's say, 50, something large. That looks good. The level of detail is pretty low. You can see it's pretty jaded, so I'm going to increase the size of the vertices, or the count, sorry, increase the count of the vertices to 64. That's better, but my camera's going to be fairly close, so it's still pretty jaded. I'm going to increase this to 128, so double 64. And that's looking much better. All right. And then depth. Depth has to do with the height of the cylinder, so let's put that at 1. And you can set any values you want. You don't have to follow me precisely. Remember that the green arrow is always pointing up. So now that I have all my settings set, I'm going to hit 7 on the keyboard to go to the top orthographic view, and I'm going to hit Z to show wireframe. Wireframe mode down here, we're normally in solid. Z switched it to wireframe, or Z, depending on which country you're from. So it bounces back and forth. If I hit Z again, it goes to solid. Z again, goes to wireframe. Okay? So we're in wireframe mode. I'm going to take my reference image and increase the size. Oh, that was too much. Probably something right about there. And I'm going to change the position to center it up. Let's say something like that. Now I'm going to center it up based off the handle up here, because that's what I'm really going to need the reference image for first. So let's move this over. That's looking good. Something like that. Okay, that looks good. I don't think we need to worry about anything else in the reference image for now. So I'm happy with the initial start point of the cylinder. So let's go into edit mode. Edit mode is found down here. Right now we're in object mode. You click object mode to go to edit mode, or tab on the keyboard. Now everything is selected. I want to deselect everything. That's A on the keyboard, or you can come down to select right here, deselect all, and A also selects all. Okay. I'm going to start with the face mode. Now let's talk about these little things if you're unfamiliar with 3D real quick. So vertex is these little dots. Edges are the lines in between the dots, and they're also known as segments. And then face is the face that's created when there's 3 or more lines connecting each other. Now face is also referred to as polygon, and line is also referred to as segment, and then vertice has always been vertice or dot. Okay, moving forward, I'm going to go to my polygon mode, and I'm going to extrude this top surface up. Now you can come over here to the side panel and hit extrude, or you can hit Alt E on the keyboard for the extrude menu, or you can just hit E. And let's extrude it up. I'm going to set the value to, let's say, 5 for the extrude, and everything else is fine. Now I want to, let's go to my top view and hit Z. I want to scale this down to match this edge here, so I'm going to hit S on the keyboard. Your tools down here are move, rotate, and scale. Then this is just select. When you have it activated, all I can do is select objects. So these are the actual tools. When you actually click on the tools, they'll give you handle icons. So here's the rotation, here's the scale. I'm going to go back to the move. But when you use the shortcut key, it doesn't give you the handle icon. So I'm going to show you this, S, and you can see here it just gives me this dotted line in a pull scale. All right, so I'm going to bring this into, let's say, about there. Take a look at the numbers. I'm fine with that. Everything looking good. So let's go Z to solid mode. Sorry, my voice is starting to crack. I want to add some extra detail in here so I can bubble it out so it's not so flat. To do so, let's go to edge mode, select an edge, and hold down Control and Alt and click on the edge next to it, and it loop selects. Now again, if you're not a shortcut person, you can go select, and that's actually ring select. There we go. So now let's divide this up. You can actually use loop, slide, and cut, or subdivide. Subdivide, I think, is quicker for this situation. The shortcut key, it's actually found in many menus. W is the quickest one. W is the shortcut key for the special menu. You also have Control E for the edge menu, Control F for the face menu, and Control V for the vertex menu. And of course, you also have options down here, mesh, edges. So this is where you can find your controls that we're finding through the shortcut menus as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hit W and go subdivide. You can see it subdivided it once. I'm going to actually increase that number. Let's say 5 times. That looks nice. Now let's show you what the smoothing does. I'm going to dial up the smoothing, and voila. Created a nice little arc for me, which is extremely helpful. It's like magic. Oh, it's magic. All right, I'm sorry, I'm terrible. Anyway, it gives me the ability to obviously smooth out the edge without having to manually pull and scale each segment, which is really nice. And I think that's pretty good there. So let's go back to our top view. And I want to create, I'm going to hit Z on the keyboard. I want to create this dip where this handle attaches to the pocket watch. So to do so, I'm going to hit A to deselect all, and I'm going to go to Vertex Mode. And I'm thinking of grabbing these 6 vertices here. It's actually, there's 2 vertices that are not seen. In fact, no, we should be fine. So I'm going to hit B on the keyboard and drag select over these. It's actually, 9 vertices? And then drag them down. Then I'm going to hit A on the keyboard to deselect, B again. Again, B is a drag select option. Drag select over the 2 center, something like that. Now I'm going to hit A again, hit B, grab these up here, bring them down a little bit more, and do the same thing with the centerpiece by hitting A and B, something like that. So that's looking good. That's the area where again, the little knob is going to attach. In fact, I probably could, A, deselect, select, and then Shift allows me to select more than one vertice. Make sure nothing on the back side is selected. Pull these up just a bit. Okay. Back to my front viewport. Hit Tab to go out of object or edit mode. And you notice here that's looking pretty good, except for this looks very jaded. We're going to clean that up with shading options, but we'll deal with that here in a bit. I actually want to duplicate this object and rotate it so I have the back piece as well. It just kills 2 birds with 1 stone. To do so, there's many ways. You can hit Control-C, Control-V, or Shift-D on the keyboard, creates a duplicate. Then I want to right-click so it keeps it in its original place. So you can see here's the original cylinder. In fact, I'm going to rename it, right-click, rename. Let's call it front. And then I'm going to right-click and rename on this guy and call it back. All right, that's looking good. All right, so the back, I'm going to rotate on the Y-axis. So right here, transform, rotation. 180 degrees. Okay. And I'm going to move it so they both touch each other. Now, I already know because I created my value at 1 for the height. I can say this is -1, and it sets it perfectly along each other's axis. So that's pretty nice. Hence why I use the round numbers that I do, or the even numbers, or not even even, just simple numbers without any extra points behind it. Let's see here. Is there anything else that I want to do? All right, let's work on the back. So I'm going to hide the front by hitting this icon right here. And I'm going to hit tab mode. I'm going to go into face mode, select this face, and hit X on the keyboard and delete face. Now X is delete. You can also hit delete on the keyboard. So I'm going to delete the face. And now I'm going to go to the back side here, select this face, and I'm going to inset it to give me a little bit more control. I don't think I want it so flat so quick, so I'm going to hit I on the keyboard is a shortcut key for inset, or you can go W, inset, or again you can go down to mesh and find it through here. So I'm going to go I and decrease it. Now if you accidentally had your cursor really close to the center and you weren't able to really inset it a lot, that's okay. You can hit S on the keyboard and scale it down to increase or decrease the inset, and you also have properties over here that you could adjust it with as well. So I'm liking maybe a little bit smaller, something like that. And I'm going to pull this up on the Z-axis. Yeah, something like that. So I'm going to do inset one more time, and I'll pull it up. I can hit 1 on the keyboard to give me the front view. And something like that. Scale it down. Okay. Now I want to add some extra geometry in here because it's going to it looks pretty flat. So I'm just going to add a few more pieces. Go to edge mode. Shortcut key for this menu down here is Control and Tab. Just to give you a heads up. So I'm going to select an edge, Control and Alt to loop it, or ring it I should say. And let me go ahead and go to subdivide, so W, subdivide. Increase the numbers, probably dial up the smoothing. Yeah, that's better. All right, I'm good with that. So if I go to tab mode, you can see it's really rough. I'm going to clean that up by hitting tab, selecting this center polygon. Let's go to polygon mode, select this one, and I'm going to grow my selection by going select, more, or control number pad plus. So control plus, growing the selection to about there. Very nice. Now I need to go to smooth shading mode, which is under shading UVs right here, smooth, or I can go W on the keyboard down to shade smooth. Now this smoothing option deals with actually moving around vertices, so don't play with that. We just want to shade smooth. And now if I hit tab, nice and smooth. Yay. Okay, so let's go back into tab and finish selecting these edges and do smooth. Now I can also grab, no, that's good. I think that's good. Yep, we're good. Okay, so let's give this guy some thickness. So go over to I'm in object mode, go over to the modify panel and go to solidify, which is the same as shell in 3D Studio Max. We're going to give it a thickness of 1. You can set your value to whatever you want. I think 1 is a good number. So you can see here it added thickness. Now the offset right here dictates which direction it's adding thickness. So it's kind of like an extrude. So right now it's extruding in at a negative value. If you wanted a positive value, it'd extrude out. So I like it at negative. I can also check high quality and even thickness if I wanted to make sure that it's giving me clean geometry. And everything looks good. So I like the way it looks, but I don't like the way it's shading and smoothing between these points. So it kind of creates this bubble look. I'm going to hit apply. That gives me the ability to go into edit mode and actually play with these polygons now. So I'm going to select this polygon face, hold down Alt, click on the edge next to it to loop select, and hit flat. Now if I go into tab mode, much better. So that's flattened out. Everything else is smooth. All right, so that's the back. I'm going to unhide the front, and I'm going to hide the back. So let's go back into edit mode on the front. let's select it, tab, edit mode. I'm going to go into face, select the face back here, hit X, delete face, go to this front piece. In fact, let me hit 7 on the keyboard, Z. So I'm going to create the little lip that's for the glass piece on the front. So I'm going to go back to my edge, and I'm going to inset I in the keyboard. And I'm going to inset it just to a thickness of 1. So there's my flat edge. And I'm going to hit E on the keyboard for extrude. I'm going to extrude it down a little bit. So let's say extrude of -2. I think that'll work. In fact, that's probably too much. So let's say -1.5. Better. Okay, and now I want to detach this face right here. To do so, I'm going to hit Control P on the keyboard. Oh, nope. I think it's just P. Yep, just hit P by itself. And right here where it says separate, I want selection. Now you can also go to mesh, and I think separate is somewhere in here. I know it is, I just don't know exactly where. It's probably under face. Yep, Alt P. No, that's poke face. But it's P. I know it's got to be somewhere in here. I rarely use this menu down here, so sorry for not being able to find it quickly. I think if you go Control F. Well, let's try Control V. Right here, separate. So it's in the vertice menu. Let's go to vertices. Yep, there it is, separate. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Hit P on the keyboard, separate by selection, and now you can see it's its own object. If I hide and unhide it, I'm going to rename this to face. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my front, and I'm going to hide my face. I don't need it right now. Let's clean this up and give it a shell. So tab on the keyboard, go to edit mode, and I'm going to go right around here and say Polygon Mode. Select, I'm going to click on this edge by holding down Alt, and now I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt and click on all these edges so it loop selects. And I'm going to say W smooth, and I'm going to go into this edge down here, W shade smooth. I want this edge here. I'm going to go W shade flat, and then this one in here, Alt W shade smooth. Okay, let's go to object mode and add the Solidify Modifier, thickness of 1, and let's see what that looks like. It's looking good. Now let me try even thickness, see what that does. I don't like the pinching that it's creating. Let me hit Z to go to wireframe mode. Yeah, I'm not too sure I like the pinching that it's creating, but well, is it really pinching that much? Another way to check, because that's kind of hard to see, is go to my properties for my object and say wireframe. Now go back to here. I'm going to leave it on even thickness. I kind of like that. Okay, let me turn off my wireframe. All right, so that's looking good. Let's go ahead and smooth this guy, or fix this smoothing type. So let's add or apply this modifier. Go into tab. I'm going to alt click this edge and say smooth. Actually flat, sorry, flat. Same thing with this edge, flat. And we're looking good. So now if I go into tab, perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and hide. Actually, let's save. So there we have the body, the base body of our pocket watch. Let's save this file, save. And again, I'm going to save it to my D drive, trapcg, time, 3D. Give this a name right here, time, and hit save. Let's start building out the neck piece. So it looks like a cylinder. and a sphere and a cylinder, sorry. So I'm going to hit Shift A on the keyboard, mesh, and let's do UV sphere. And I'm going to hit Z on the keyboard so I can see it. Let's increase its size. I'm going to remember that it's 32 segments. I think that's fine for this piece right here. But I do want to keep this in mind because when I create the cylinder, I need it to be 32 segments as well. So let me bring this up. And it's still not quite big enough, so let me scale it up. Probably do about there. Let's take a look at this from a solid standpoint. That's good. All right, so let me rotate it on the x-axis 90 degrees because I want this vertex to be facing up for the connection. And is there anything else I want to change in here? No, that should be it. Okay, so scale. Let's go to my front viewport. That's looking good. So I'm going to go into Shift A again, mesh, cylinder. I'm at Z on the keyboard. Let's scale this guy up. Yours is probably massive. I actually saved and closed and went back in, so it reset my creation settings. So if yours is set to what you originally did for the clock body, just scale it down. Mine I need to scale up a bit. And then the vertices, I want to make sure it's set to 32 just like it was for the cylinder. Okay, so that way I have an even number of sides when I blend these two shapes together. Makes your life easier, and we can go ahead and rotate on the x-axis of 90. Give it a little more depth too. So let's move this up. It's going to go in here, so probably right about there. I'm going to increase the scale. Pull it up a little bit. And I'm actually going to decrease the, oh no, that looks about right actually. Z. Okay, so we want to combine these two objects. I'm going to select both by holding down Shift and clicking on the second object. And then I'm going to go and hit CTRL J to combine. Voila. And let's go into edit mode. So let's start deleting faces. Go to my top view. I'm going to turn on this icon right here if yours is not on already. And what that does, you can see it makes it see-through. That's because it's giving me the ability to select the back-facing polygons. All right. So I'm going to hit A on the keyboard to deselect all, and I'm going to go B. I'm going to delete thinking all these. And hit X, all the faces. There we go. So I'm going to select this face down here. Let me turn off back facing. Select this face, hit X, and delete. Okay. So now I want to combine these two. So I'm going to go to Edge Mode, hold down Alt to loop select, and do the same thing, Shift and Alt. So I have both selected. And there's a couple bridge tool options. If you go to your Tools panel, you'll notice that there is the Loop Tools bridge. This is the add-on that we added. Or you also have the normal bridge, which I think is under Mesh, Edges, and Bridge Loop. Edge loops. We're going to use this one. The shortcut key for both is W. So here's bridge edge loops, and here's the loop tools. Okay. So bridge edge loops. Now I'm going to add some cuts in here. Let's say 3. And let's play with the profile. Okay. Let's add some smoothness maybe. Something maybe like let me hold down Shift and do this. Something like that. That looks good. That's not good enough. Let me increase the profile a little bit more. Okay, so it's not quite what I want, but it's close. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect all. Select this edge here and scale it up a little bit. That's better. Much better. Now I'm going to go to this edge here and hold down Alt, and I'm going to do bridge or bevel. Again, bevel can be, let's see, Alt. I think Control B is a shortcut key, but if you go Alt, let's see, we're on edge, so Alt E, bevel, Control B. So if you're not really seeing it work, just click and then you can manually play with it over here. And let's add some extra lines to smooth it out. That's probably good. Okay. So that is the neck piece. Let's go back to 7 and hit tab, and I'm going to go ahead and just click smooth to clean it up. All right. Now I do think that I don't want it to be so wide on the front to back. So I'm going to, let's change, wow, the position's a little off. Oops, no, that's not, never mind. Let's go ahead and scale on the, I think, y-axis. I'm going to flatten it out a little bit. Say probably about there. Okay. Looking good. I'm going to go back to Z, or 7, sorry, front view. I'm going to move it down just a little bit. All right, so let's get this top piece done. I'm going to do it slightly different, creation method. So I'm going to hit Shift-A on the keyboard, mesh, or actually I'm going to use curve, Bezier. Drag this bad boy up. Okay, and I'm going to hide. I'm going to select this and hit hide. Go back to my Bezier. And go into edit mode. Okay, basically this is like splines and other 3D programs. So I'm going to click and put this here. I'm going to set this guy's value to 0 on the x-axis, and I'm going to move it down a bit. I'm going to grab these points, drag them out. Oops. And I think I need an extra dot in here. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. I could have just put this right around in here, because you can see this is like a real bend, and hit E on the keyboard and bring it out to, let's say, there. Or you can actually go select 2 vertices and hit W and subdivide. Okay, and that will add a point in the center here. So I think that's good. Let me space it out a little bit more. All right, so let's give this some physical dimension. Go to the properties menu for the edge mode, and we're going to set the fill type. We're in 3D. Set the fill type to full. Increase the bevel, and you can see here now it's creating the bevel or the tube. Okay, so let's give it some resolution right here. If I hit Z, you'll physically see it happen. There you go. And it's making it more round. I'm going to set this to 12. Go back to my front. Now some of you might see some pinching going on in this area right here. Usually when these things are too close together, you'll start seeing more pinching. You can actually change that by decreasing the resolution or increasing the resolution up here. And what this does is there's the resolution along the path instead of around the path. Okay, I'm going to set mine to 0 because I'm going to manually play with that once I turn it into an edible mesh. So let's see, let's move this dot down a little bit more, probably about there. And we're only doing half because we're going to mirror the other half, if I haven't explained that already. And I think depth, let's increase the depth. I'm going to unhide Alt, I'm going to go out of this mode, unhide Alt H to see how it's interacting. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Or, yeah, let's make it a little bit bigger. Something like that. Okay. Looking good. Now let's convert this to an edible mesh. So to do so, you're going to hit Alt-C on the keyboard. Or you can come to Object, all the way here, convert to Mesh from Curve. So Alt-C. And now it's a mesh object. If I hit Tab, I can modify this just like any other mesh object. So I'm going to click on this, hit Control-B to bevel it, bevel this out, and that's good. Like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and come over here. You can see that there's a hole here. So I'm going to Alt-click to loop it. Now there's a couple ways to fill this. F on the keyboard is just an automatic fill. Or you can go, and again, this is under Mesh Options. If you go Edges, sorry, Faces, there's Alt-Fill, or Alt-F, and what that's going to do is actually create connection points. It's pretty sloppy geometry, so you'll probably have to come in here and clean it up. Sometimes, if you go Mesh, Edge, and do, is it Edge or Face? Yep, Face, Shift-Alt-F, it will clean some of it up, but that doesn't always work. So I'm going to leave as is. I'm actually going to do it as a full fill, so I'm just going to hit F. And I'm going to set the shading type, so W, to flat. Tab. There we go. And I might go through and bevel this out later. We'll see. Right now I like the way it is. Let's go to my front viewport. Let's mirror this. So modify panel here. Click Add Modifier and add mirror, and voila. All done. Don't have to do both sides. Very useful. Okay, so let's do this last piece, or second to last piece, the handle. I'm going to go to Shift+A again, curve, Bezier, move it up, and let me set it to the center point in here. I'm going to go to Z to wireframe mode, tab to go into edit mode, grab this point and probably put it right about here. Set this point to the 0 axis. Again, I'm going to mirror it, that's why I'm doing that. Alright, so let me select this guy and hit E on the keyboard. Put a point here, and E, put a point here. Now I'm going to mess with the tangents. If you want to play with one of the little handles without playing with the other, all you need to do is select on the vertex and say V and change it to free. I'm not going to do that right now, but just showing you that's how you could do it. Let's pull this one out. Wrap this one back around. Probably something like that. And I'm going to actually set the height to match the vertex for the handle. So let me copy, Control C, Control V. So that way I know that's 100% flat. And let's give this some thickness. So again, the properties panel, full, depth, resolution. I'm going to set it to 12. I'm going to hit Z to see what this looks like. All right, so that's almost there. Let me pull this down a little bit maybe. Grab this point, move it up. Something like that. Let's go ahead and mirror this. So come out of edit mode, object mode, mirror. All right, so I don't like kind of this peak that it's created. So let's go back to object mode and pull this out a little bit. There we go. All right, looking good. And now last but not least, let's do the little handle or the little dial piece. And it looks like a cylinder. So I'm going to go out of edit mode. Make sure I'm not in edit mode when I do this. Shift+A, mesh, and cylinder. And let me drag this up. Actually, sorry, I'm going to delete that because I want to change the segment count. So Shift+A, cylinder, Z so we can see it. Vertex count I'm going to take to 64. And depth, let's change the rotation, 90. Let's add a little bit more depth. I'll start with there. So that's good. Let's bring it up. I'm going to scale it up, of course. Something like that. Now I'm going to go into edit mode. Select the bottom face here. Let's go to face mode. Scale it down. Too much. Still too much. Let's bring it back up a little bit more. Raise it. Okay. And I think this is too tall for mine. I'm going to bring it down just a bit. Okay. So let's create that like kind of weird texture that's on the sides here. We're going to extrude each individual polygon out. To do so, I'm going to hit B on the keyboard and drag select. Now, if you notice, it only selects half the faces. That's very problematic. So I'm going to hit A to deselect all. You got to turn this icon on right here so you can see right through it. And now I can hit B again to drag select. And I just want the side faces. Now I'm going to go ahead and extrude, but this time I'm going to extrude on individual faces. So this option right here, or Alt-E, individual faces. Okay, so I'm going to extrude it out to about there. So now I have individual faces extruded, but they're too thick. And right now, if I hit scale, it's just going to scale all of them together. In fact, I can bring them in a little bit. That's fine. Maybe a little bit right about there. Now, if I want to scale each individual face, I need to come down here and change the way my scale is working. So I'm going to set it, instead of being active element, to individual origins. Now I want to hit scale. Each polygon is scaling individually. So I'm going to bring it down, stay right about there. Now I want to scale just on the Z-axis, so scale, and actually I think on the Y-axis, scale it back up. And I'm going to move it up. Scale Y. Okay, so that created the rough outer pattern that we needed, very simply and easily. Let me play with the top a little bit more. So polygon, face, extrude, and scale. That's probably good. All right, I think that's good for now. And let's create the last piece, which is the neck, which is just a simple cylinder. So Shift A on the keyboard, make sure I'm not in edit mode. I'm in object mode. Shift A, mesh, and cylinder. Hit Z so I can see it. I don't need 64 segments for this, so let's bring it down to 32. And radius of, let's leave the radius, depth. Let's just rotate it. Sorry, that's location, rotation, 90. And Z, let's move it up. Okay, so then it's a little thick. Scale it down a little bit. There we have it. And of course, set it to smooth. And voila. Now I have the complete clock and face. So that's looking good. Let's save this file. Save. I think I've hit my 50-minute mark, so go ahead and join me for part 2 of modeling out the pocket watch, or the time tutorial. Sorry, this is a time tutorial. So join me for part 2, and we'll start building the face out.